Sunday, March 9, 2025, saw continued developments in the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Reports emerged detailing a surprising tactic employed by Russian forces in the Kursk region, while diplomatic efforts and discussions surrounding military support also unfolded. According to pro-Russian war bloggers, Russian troops carried out a surprise attack on Ukrainian forces in the Kursk region by moving miles through a major gas pipeline. This action was reportedly part of a larger offensive aimed at removing Ukrainian soldiers from this western Russian area. Yuri Podolyaka, a Ukrainian-born blogger who supports Russia, stated that some Russian special forces spent several days inside the pipeline before attempting the surprise attack near the town of Sudzha. This pipeline was reportedly used by Moscow to transport gas to Europe until recently. According to Ukrainian military sources and the pro-Kremlin blogger, some Russian operatives walked approximately 15 kilometers, or about 9 miles, inside the pipeline to strike Ukrainian units from behind. Podolyaka claimed the troops then attacked near the strategic border town of Sudzha. In August of the previous year, Ukraine reported that thousands of its soldiers had taken control of about 1,300 square kilometers of Russia's Kursk region, stating this was an effort to gain leverage for future negotiations and to compel Russia to move forces from eastern Ukraine. On the diplomatic front, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Kyiv remains fully committed to constructive dialogue with U.S. representatives in Saudi Arabia in the following week, expressing hope for agreement on the next steps. Zelensky affirmed that Ukraine has sought peace from the beginning of the war, emphasizing that realistic proposals are on the table and stressing the importance of swift and effective action. He announced his upcoming visit to Saudi Arabia and mentioned that after his meeting with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on Monday, Ukrainian diplomatic and military officials would remain for a meeting with the U.S. team the day after. It was noted that U.S. representatives had already held 2 sets of talks with their Russian counterparts, the first of which took place in Saudi Arabia. President Zelensky also reported that Russia had carried out hundreds of attacks against Ukrainians in the past week. He stated on social media platform X that Moscow had used approximately 1,200 guided aerial bombs, nearly 870 attack drones, and over 80 missiles. Zelensky emphasized ongoing work with partners to secure life-saving support, including air defense systems, investments in defense production, and stronger sanctions against Russia. He also reiterated Ukraine's continued efforts to bring a just peace closer and ensure reliable security guarantees. Earlier, on Saturday, March 8, Zelensky sent his condolences following deadly strikes in the Donetsk region, where Russia fired 2 ballistic missiles on Dobropilya, followed by another strike targeting rescuers. He reported that 9 residential buildings, a shopping center, and stores were hit, tragically resulting in the deaths of 11 people. Elon Musk, a prominent figure associated with former U.S. President Donald Trump's administration, commented on the significance of his Starlink internet system for Ukraine. In a post on X, Musk asserted that Ukraine's entire front line would collapse if I turned it off. He described Starlink as the backbone of the Ukrainian army, noting that most battlefield positions are equipped with their own terminal. Ukraine reported approximately 42,000 Starlink terminals in operation across its military, hospitals, businesses, and aid organizations the previous year. Musk expressed his weariness with the years of slaughter in a stalemate that Ukraine will inevitably lose. These statements followed a dispute involving U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Poland's Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski regarding Starlink. Sikorski mentioned that Poland pays around $50 million annually for Kyiv to use Starlink services, which provide crucial internet connectivity to Ukraine and its military. He criticized the ethics of threatening a victim of aggression and suggested that if SpaceX proves unreliable, Poland would be forced to seek other providers. Rubio responded by accusing Sikorski of making things up and denying any threats to cut off Ukraine from Starlink. Rubio argued that without Starlink, Ukraine would have lost the war long ago and that Russians would be at the Polish border. Musk later stated that he would never cut off Starlink despite his disagreements with Ukraine. Reports from February indicated that U.S. negotiators pressing Kyiv for access to Ukraine's critical minerals had raised the possibility of limiting the country's access to Starlink, according to sources familiar with the matter. Furthermore, it was reported that the U.S. government had already revoked some access to satellite imagery for Ukraine and paused intelligence sharing, increasing pressure on Kyiv as Trump seeks a swift end to the war, now in its fourth year since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. In other news concerning military support, a report from Forbes indicated that the U.S. has partially stopped supporting the maintenance of F-16 fighter jets in Ukraine. While the U.S. cannot simply turn off the U.S.-made F-16s operated by the Ukrainian Air Force, a suspension of military support from the Trump administration would affect the servicing of these aircraft. The report specifically highlighted the vitally important support for ALQ-131 electronic warfare pods. During President Joe Biden's administration, the U.S. provided significant support for the F-16s, including pilot training, spare parts, ammunition, and a U.S. Air Force team dedicated to programming the ALQ-131 electronic countermeasures units installed beneath the aircraft. An official U.S. Air Force representative explained that the ALQ-131 can momentarily create an area of air superiority, which is strategically important. Ukrainian forces utilized the F-16's countermeasure pods to fill Russian radar screens with electronic noise. The continued U.S. support was crucial because Russia could potentially overcome the jamming by reprogramming its radars. Under Biden, the U.S. team could keep pace with Russian adaptation by constantly changing the frequencies for the ALQ-131. However, with the reported shift under President Trump, Ukrainian pilots may be left with devices whose software could soon become outdated. Despite this, Ukraine is not without options. Forbes suggested that Ukraine could shift the burden of countering air interference to the Dassault Mirage 2000 fighter jets it is receiving from France. These French aircraft are equipped with their own electronic warfare systems, and the U.S. is not involved in their programming. Additionally, the French Ministry of Defense has pledged to install new electronic countermeasures on the Mirage 2000s before their transfer to Ukraine. In the long term, Ukraine might be able to refit its F-16s with non-US-made electronic countermeasures, a step reportedly taken by Belgium in the 1990s. Adding to the international military assistance, France announced it would provide Ukraine with €195 million in military aid, utilizing profits from frozen Russian assets. These funds will be directed towards the procurement of artillery ammunition and aviation bombs. The decision drew criticism from Russia. France's Minister of the Armed Forces, Sébastien Lecornu, stated in an interview that Paris intends to accelerate the production of weaponry supplied to the Ukrainian armed forces. He detailed that the €195 million from the profits of frozen Russian assets would be used to supply 155mm artillery shells and ASM air-to-ground missiles, which are used by the Mirage 2000 fighters. France will also expedite the transfer of AMX-10 light tanks and VAB armored personnel carriers that were previously in service with its own army. Lecornu emphasized that in the face of global instability, France is strengthening its defense capabilities alongside its allies. He highlighted the priority of increasing the production of ammunition and electronic warfare equipment, also noting the importance of drones, troop automation, artificial intelligence, and space technologies for the future of the armed forces. France is increasing its production of military equipment for both Ukraine and its own needs. Dassault Aviation, for instance, plans to increase Rafale fighter jet production from 2 per month in 2024 to 4 or 5 per month by 2026. The production of ASM air-to-ground bombs is also projected to double by 2026, and the manufacturing of MBDA anti-tank missiles, Acheron MP, will increase this year. To accelerate arms manufacturing, the French government is establishing new industrial partnerships with companies like Thales and EOS, which specialize in the defense sector. The Russian State Duma reportedly stated that France's move violates all norms of international law, describing it as hysteria from powerlessness. Meanwhile, the European Union remains committed to completely phasing out its supply of Russian gas, according to EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Speaking to reporters in Brussels, von der Leyen stated her clear commitment to phasing out Russian gas, calling it an absolute must. She acknowledged the progress made, but also noted the need for vigilance regarding loopholes that require attention. In Kyiv, crowds gathered to demand the release of prisoners of war and to honor the birthday of the poet Taras Shevchenko. These events on March 9, 2025, illustrate the complex and multifaceted nature of the Ukraine-Russia war, encompassing battlefield developments, diplomatic engagements, shifts in international military support, and ongoing efforts towards peace, while also highlighting the significant role of technology and international partnerships in the conflict. The use of unconventional tactics, such as the alleged Russian troop movement through a gas pipeline, underscores the evolving nature of warfare in the region. The diplomatic activity, particularly Ukraine's upcoming discussions with the US and Saudi Arabia, signals continued efforts to find a resolution. However, uncertainties surrounding long-term US support and the strategic implications of these potential changes remain critical factors in the ongoing conflict. The military aid provided by other nations, such as France, demonstrates a broader international commitment to supporting Ukraine, even as the dynamics of support from key allies may be shifting.